CCP threat to civilization, more evidence. Cartels in a war against Americans. The United States has spent $110 billion on AIDS prevention. Less than half the money went to medical supplies and health workers. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. Hey, it's been another wall-to-wall week. Hostages returned, but what about Hamas? I joined most of the world in celebrating the return of the remaining 20 living hostages. However, Hamas is now policing the streets of Gaza as the IDF has moved back out of central Gaza per the agreement. I believe we are now in phase 2 of this peace deal, and it's not looking good. As I predicted in my prior pieces, I believe the Israelis will have to still go in and remove the Hamas crew in order to both restore Gaza to some semblance of habitability and to have peace in the Middle East. What we know is that Hamas rolled over on the hostages since they knew that Israel had the full backing of the USA, and that meant their gig was over, at least as far as the hostages. What I still do not understand is why anyone would protest in favor of Hamas. These are bloodthirsty terrorists. Remember, these murderers and rapists tortured their victims who were peaceably attending a music festival on October 7th, 2023. They attacked on that date, not the other way around, and like most bullies, they are cowards. Not only did they go after civilians, but they then hid behind other Gazans when the Israelis tried to come and get their hostages. As if anyone needed more proof, the latest is that Hamas has not surrendered arms and just executed 8 people in cold blood. This was apparently since they were calling for the administration of Gaza that was not Hamas. I have no respect for anyone who takes their side, period. As a side note, a dissident in Venezuela won the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025. I take nothing away from her, and interestingly, she saluted President Trump. The prize, like virtually every major award, has been tainted by politics. Recall that all Obama had to do was to get elected, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. I stopped paying attention to the Oscars and the other beauty shows awards decades ago. I do believe if Trump pulls off the ultimate and resolves the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he will win next year. But again, the recognition of peace through strength is the real victory here. CCP threat to civilization, more evidence. The CCP has tried to implement a series of economic sanctions against the USA recently. This is a poor strategy since they need us a lot more than we need them. I've tried for as long as I've been on the air to discourage any type of trade with China. That is where Trump and I disagree. The headline for their latest effort is the CCP's limitation on export of critical rare earth minerals. Well, first, similar to the chip and pharmaceuticals crisis during the COVID shutdown, the leaders in the world economy stupidly got themselves into this mess. I applaud Trump's efforts to get computer chips and big pharma back into the USA. Note that this helps most of the world, not just us. Second, turning back to rare earth minerals, we have plenty in the ground. However, in terms of active supply, the CCP may control as much as 90%. They are used in the manufacture of computer chips and other in-demand products today. The Biden-Harris administration foolishly blocked development of domestic production. I blame both political parties for not attending to America's needs. Instead, the Pauls pad their own pockets with insider trading and slush funds. Third, one positive headline is that Trump has now authorized what is labeled a mega mine in Alaska. This reversed the idiotic Biden-Harris administration's blocking development of such resources. This cannot happen fast enough. The academic community may finally be waking up to the threat from the CCP. However, it is hard to wean themselves off the payola. I have previously reported on so-called Confucius Institutes on many college campuses. They provided so-called faculty and resources. These really functioned as CCP spy centers and to spread false propaganda. As more evidence accumulated about the dangers of these institutes, many have been closed. Of course, the CCP is shameless and still pursues other avenues to influence both academia and American society. In addition, a recent report is that 7 universities have now cut ties with a CCT program that can lead to transfer of sensitive and valuable technology being stolen by the CCP. A congressional committee announced that Dartmouth College, Temple University, UC Davis, UC Irvine, UC Riverside, Notre Dame, and the University of Tennessee have ended their joint programs with the Chinese Scholarship Council. That's right, sounds nice and innocent, doesn't it, folks? The deal was that the CCP would send over scholarship students in these sensitive areas, but required them to return to China for at least 2 years thereafter, obviously to make sure the CCP got the latest technology that Americans could produce. Cartels and a war against Americans. It has not made a lot of sense to me with so many people protesting during normal working hours. They risk getting hurt and getting jailed. The threats against ICE and other government agents are questionable, as these agents serve the will of the majority of the American people. Then there are reports of bounties to kill Border Patrol or ICE agents ranging from 5,000 to 50,000. Who is paying the protesters and why? Well, the cartels have been dealing death with drugs and committing heinous crimes through the trafficking of children and adults. The Trump administration crackdown means the loss of billions of dollars to these cartels. So that they would be the funding source makes a lot of sense. In turn, classifying these cartels as terrorists and eliminating them is a necessary step. They can choose to use their barrels of money and live good somewhere, or choose to be exterminated like Hamas and those Venezuelan drug boats. Just as I have no respect for anyone protesting for Hamas, I have no use for anyone who opposes the work of ICE and other government agents to clean up our communities. One recent report, which is not getting enough headlines, is that a combined federal and state task force went after trafficking of children in the greater San Antonio, Texas area. That's about 3.5 hours from our studios here in Houston. The effort rescued more than 30 missing children. The operation was called Operation Lightning Bug. Pair this with the tragic reports of heinous crimes being committed by those who've been arrested numerous times. From California, an illegal who was deported 7 times previously killed 6 people in a drunk driving collision. He had an ICE detainer on him, which the authorities in California ignored. Similar stories include an ICE immigration detainer on an illegal who repeatedly raped an 11-year-old girl. I have a grandchild who's 11, so this hits home for me. This type of horror should not be happening anywhere in the world, much less in America. Layoffs related to the government shutdown. The Chucky shutdown has brought about just the desserts for the Democrats. Layoffs of non-essential government employees, almost all of whom are Democrats. One agency that was closed was the Community Financial Institutions Fund. Reports in the conservative media are that this little-known agency was granting awards of our hard-earned tax dollars based on race and other left-wing priorities. An article in the Daily Caller identified millions going to suspect operations. Most American taxpayers would scream with anger if they knew about these likely illegal handouts. Dominion voting systems changes hands. Combining business and politics, Dominion voting systems, which was a focus of Republican complaints following the 2020 presidential election, was purchased by an election reform advocate and has been renamed Liberty Vote. This was based on an article from the Daily Wire. The new owner promises positive election procedures going forward. Of course, Dominion was in the news over the last few years as certain allegations related to their machines were not supported and it achieved large settlements. My own take is that it is not the machines as much as those who are operating the machines. I call for much more federal supervision of federal elections and, if required, FBI intervention to make sure elections are run properly. Speaking of wasting taxpayer money, a recent Washington Free Beacon headline reads, "The United States has spent $110 billion on AIDS prevention. Less than half the money went to medical supplies and health workers," a State Department audit found. That's just the headline, folks. This is a stunning amount of money. I want to volunteer that I counseled employers through the AIDS crisis of the late 1980s into the 1990s. I am happy to see that medical progress has been made. One of my former clients told me that he was diagnosed as HIV positive, but due to new medications, he was so clear of the virus that he could pass a blood test as not being positive. In any event, the article by Adam Credo points out the enormous waste, even in programs that are intended to do good. The point being that there is plenty of room to cut and achieve efficiencies in these government programs. And for my money, time to let state and local governments decide how to spend the money in their own communities. We taxpayers send tons of monies to Washington. Most of it is scraped off by the massive and inefficient bureaucracy and then doled out to the states like the feds or Santa Claus. Let's end that. I note that a former Saving America guest, Simon Hankinson, an expert at the Heritage Foundation, is quoted in the article. He references agencies with far left agendas that are being richly supported by your hard-earned tax dollars. There are plenty of other details in that article, and I refer you to that if you'd like to see more of the gory details of the waste of your tax dollars. Half-price books closing stores while Barnes & Noble is hanging in there. Dickens' famous novel was The Tale of Two Cities. Well, this is the tale of two booksellers. Barnes & Noble is the dominant force remaining in bricks and mortar bookstores. I thought sales were sliding toward ebooks and audiobooks, but no, hard copy sales are still rolling. A quick check indicated that B&N was founded in 1894 and has grown to 29,000 employees. B&N will open 60 new stores during 2025. Not So Rosy is a place that I used to patronize, Half Price Books, which has been around for 52 years. In fact, for many years, there was a location here in Houston that was not far from me. That location has been gone for a while now. The latest report from Half Price Books is they are closing locations in Texas and California. I find this interesting since with inflation and things, I would think that readers would be looking for bargains in books. The rub here is that the retail space is expensive, and as their leases expire, these stores cannot afford the increases in rents in certain markets. All 16 employees dead after a massive explosion at a factory in Tennessee. This happened at the 45-year-old Accurate Energetic Systems plant in rural Tennessee. I extend my sympathy to the families of the victims. I note that this type of tragedy is rare since the more dangerous of a production facility, the more there is an emphasis on safety. My own experience was in oil and chemical refineries. While they can be dangerous, they are some of the safest workplaces due to comprehensive and persistent focus on safety. I will later report on the cause of the large loss of life here. Due to the concern for safety, just entering the area where the entire building is destroyed and the embers are still burning is hazardous. This is an old story, but one that I really like. In 1974, a ship with 277 passengers caught fire and sunk in the oceans near Philippines. A woman named Candelaria Venezuela was one of the passengers. She clung to a sea turtle that swam up under her as she tried to survive in the water. The report is that she hung on for 2 days. When she was finally rescued by a Navy ship, the rescuers thought she was clinging to an oil barrel. However, the turtle pulled away and circled twice after she grabbed the life preserver. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.